Welcome to the VLSI technology lecture. So now today in this lecture, today we are going to see this etching process. So as I explained in my many previous videos, I explained you about the etching process that we generally follow to remove a certain layers while fabricating a certain devices. So this etching process we have encountered number of times, and I explained you in different processing steps of my NMOS fabrication, how this etching can be used for selectively removing a certain portion to remove the particular SiO2 layer to make an a particular window to for doping process, or also it can be used to remove a certain layer completely from the certain layers. So basically, we have already seen why this etching is actually performed. So basically, if you see, this etching is performed to either uniformly removing a layer from a wafer, or we can also remove a certain layer locally, okay? Such as in the case of doping process, we are just removing a certain portion, okay? So by which we can remove a certain layer of our certain layer like SiO2 or some other layers, okay? In the case of formation of the devices. So here in our syllabus, we have to talk about how this etching is actually performed by using the wet chemical etching process. Okay. So I also initially, while discussing about the wafer preparation technique, I told you that there is a chemical etching process, okay, in which we have seen that how this wafer can be immersed into the particular chemical solutions, and then we can remove the certain layer of the silicon from the wafer surfaces, so that a certain contamination can also be removed, certain damages can be repaired after immersing it into the particular agent solution. So today we have to look at in more detail how this wet chemical etching is actually performed. Okay, so before the starting, just for the sake of completeness, I would like to make you aware about these types of etchings. Okay, so here you can see that we have a different type of etchings, like which is broadly categorized into dry etching or wet chemical etching. So within this dry chemical, means dry etching process, it is subdivided into three different categories. For example, we are having the physical etching process, in which we are having this two broadly used technique, which is called as ion milling, which is also known as ion beam etching technique, and sputtering. Another one is called as like dry chemical etching, okay, and then we are having the reactive ion etching. Okay, so these are the three cases that actually comes under the dry etching process, and then we are having the wet chemical etching process. So in our syllabus we have to discuss about the wet chemical etching process. Okay, I will just talk about these three topics, okay, briefly, so that you would be able to understand what is the distinguish between these two things, right? So how to distinguish, or what are the differences. So as you can see in this case, like in the first case, physical etching process, okay, you see that in this etching or removal of a certain layer, okay, we don't require any reactive chemical species. Okay, so we don't require any reactive chemical species. We don't have to have a particular chemical reaction, but rather what we do is we have to take a certain inert gases, and then this inert gases is somehow ionized, and then it is accelerated towards the surface of the wafer, where from where we have to remove the certain layer. Okay, and due to the bombardment of this organ ions, this is going to transfer their momentum to the surface atoms, and thereby it is able to remove the atoms of our surface. Okay, in this way we can remove a certain layer. Okay, so this is what we have written here, that this process involves the removal of material by momentum transfer from a rapidly moving inert projectile using organ. Okay, so generally to have this this operation requires the formation of gas discharge, okay, to produce the high velocity organ gas. So basically, as I said, that there are two different techniques. One is called ion beam etching or ion milling, or another one is known as the sputtering technique, by which we can actually remove a certain layer of certain layer from the wafers that we want to etch out. You remember that in the case of ion beam etching and sputtering, the underlying principles are similar, but there are only differences related to its its operation. Means it is how we operate it. Okay, there may be a certain differences by which we are having this system. Okay, the system arrangement may be a little bit different. Otherwise, the underlying principles are same. Okay, we have to accelerate the organ ions, and then we have to strike it onto the wafer so that there will be a momentum transfer, and then we can remove the atoms from the surface. You might be aware that from my previous lectures, while discussing about the molecular beam epitaxy, I told you that when we start the molecular beam epitaxy before MBE process, first we need to perform the in situ cleaning of the wafers. And I explained that we generally use the sputtering etching technique. Okay, so because it is a dry chemical, means it is a dry etching technique, what we do is we generally use the organ gas, and then this organ ions we send towards the our wafer, and then it will able to remove the certain layer from the wafers, and then again the process is followed by the annealing process, in which we have to raise the temperature of the wafer from 800 to 900 degrees centigrade for a certain amount of time, and then again we need to get it cool so that the damaged surface can be repaired again. So this I have already discussed while discussing about the molecular, when I discussed about the molecular beam epitaxy. Similarly, we can have the dry chemical etching process. Okay, so what we mean to have this dry chemical etching process? So when I discussed about the our wafer phase epitaxy, okay, if you recall again, because in this case again we have done the in situ cleaning, okay, of the wafer. Similarly, when we perform the wafer phase epitaxy, okay, we need to clean the wafer. So generally in VPE system, wafer phase epitaxy system, first we send the hydrogen gas at very high temperature so that the oxygen or any trace impurity oxygen may be removed, and then we have to pass the anhydrous hydrochloric, okay, HCl gas. Okay, so that gas we generally send to remove the certain layer of the silicon from the top of our silicon, okay, silicon wafer. So that we have to perform before growing the epitaxial layer of the silicon in the case of vapor phase epitaxy. So that we have already studied. Okay, and then you can see that basically in the dry chemical etching, we have to send the agent in the form of dry gases. Okay, it should not be liquid, but it should be dry gases. And certain reaction is going to take place, and then a layer can be removed from the top of the wafer surface. So especially it is used for the in situ cleaning or in situ etching, you can say. Now we have the another category which is called as the reactive ion etching. Okay, so as I said here, it is, you can see this reactive ion etching is actually taking the advantages of both dry physical etching plus dry chemical etching. So generally in this case, the reactive ion etching, the wafers are actually emerged into a gas discharge. Okay, Within this gas discharge, we do have both the ion beams as well as the reactive chemical species. Okay, both will be available within this chamber, and generally what happens is this ion beams are striking onto the wafer surface, and then this way it is actually weakening the chemical bonds. Okay, and then this reactive chemical species are actually going to attack it chemically, and thereby it will be able to remove the layer from the top of the surface. So basically it is the combination of the two. Okay, you remember that this reactive ion etching is the combination of the two, in which we are taking the advantages of physical etching process and dry chemical etching, and both will work together to give the etch rate that can be greater than the two separate processes. Okay, so generally etch rate in this case of reactive ion etching process will be more than the individual processes. Now we have to concentrate upon this wet chemical etching process, okay, which is available there in your syllabus. We have to study it. Okay, so you see in this case in wet chemical etching process, okay, as the name suggests, it is wet chemicals that we have to use for removing the layer from the top of the surface. Okay, remember that, as I said, that either we need to remove the complete layer, okay, from the surface, or we have to remove the layer selectively to open a certain window to transfer the patterns. Okay, while fabricating the devices, we have to remove the layers, means based on the selective reasons. As you can see here, we have written like it is can be locally removed, as in the case of delineation. Okay, so basically we have to make the pattern, we have to transfer the pattern for making the microcircuits, right? So that is the selectively we can remove. So here we have to understand that the wet chemical etching process is generally limited by these three factors. Okay, the first factor, the rate by which we are transporting the chemical agents to the surface. Okay, first of all, the transportation, the rate by which we are transporting these chemicals to the surface of the wafer. The second one is the how fast this chemical is actually reacting over the surface. Okay, what will be the chemical reaction rate? Similarly, when it is making a reaction, okay, when it is making the reaction, how fast this reaction product can be removed from the surface. Okay, you try to understand that whenever you immerse this particular wafer into the wet chemicals, okay, then obviously there will be a certain rate by which these chemicals will be actually touching your wafer surface, at which we have to remove the certain layer. Okay, so once the chemical reaction starts, there will be a certain byproduct is going to be formed around the surface, okay, over this surface. So generally what happens, because of this, there will be a creation of some stagnant layer. Whenever this wafer we are immersed into the solution, agent solution, a certain stagnant layer will be formed between the agent and the surface interface. Okay, some stagnant layer forms, and then this chemical may or may not reach to the surface at constant speed, and thereby we are saying that the transport of the reactant to the surface, okay, it is limited by this. And then how this is, how fast it is going to be reacted, and how fast we are able to remove those byproducts from the surface. Okay, if you are not able to remove those byproducts, then what happens is finally your wafer will be covered by the byproducts, and there may be a chances that your chemical agent may not be able to reach further to your wafer, and it will not able to make the reactions. So here I have note down certain results, what will be the consequences if the etch process is limited by these three factors. Okay, what will be the results? So which we have already seen from the experimentally found results. Okay, these are the results which by experimental things we have established. Okay, so you can see here that when this etch process is limited by the rate of diffusion of the agent. Okay, I mean to say that the transportation rate of the reactant to the surface. So either you can say it is the rate of diffusion of the agent through the stagnant layer which cover the surface. Okay, so when this is happening, or it is limited by the rate of diffusion, okay, generally this etching will be like a polishing. Okay, it will be like a polishing. And then what happens, any rough surfaces that may have been created, or any many protuberances, you can say protuberances means there may be some bulging surfaces. Okay, when you exposed this wafers into this chemical solution, certain surface portion may get bulges. Okay, due to the chemical reaction. So those rough surfaces or these bulges can be treated by having this rate diffusion, limited rate diffusion, rate of diffusion. Okay, and that will become smoother. Similarly, rate of surface reaction, if this is too low, okay, it is going to enhance the surface roughnesses. Okay, it is going to enhance the surface roughness. Similarly, the rate of removal of the reaction product. Okay, if we have certain rate, if this rate is very low, then obviously there will be a thick layer is going to develop over the surface along with the stagnant layer, and that time this agent has to penetrate through. Okay, with both this byproduct layer and your stagnant layer. Okay, and that is going to determine what will be the equilibrium amount of reaction product that is going to be left onto the substrate. And therefore it is going to decide what will be the etching rate, because at that time the agent may not able to reach to the surface, and thereby it is limiting factors which is going to decide what would be the etching rate. Here one point that we have to notice, that to improve the etching, okay, it may be limited by all these three factors, but if you want to improve the etching, it has been found that if we continuously steering the solution, okay, then generally whatever be the byproducts that have formed over the surface of our wafers, that can be removed easily. Okay, so generally steering of this solution, rapid steering of this solution is helping to removal of the reaction products and gas bubbles from the surface, and therefore your wafer can be exposed to always a very fresh etchant solution, and then this reaction cannot be limited. Means that time your chemical will always be reaching to your wafer surface, and this reaction will always take place. Similarly, it has been found if we increase the temperature of the etch solution, okay, if we increase it, then again the etch rate can also be improved. Okay, this etching process or etch rate can be improved. It is found that if we increase it by 10 degrees centigrade, almost we can double the etch rate. Okay, so now let's try to understand that what are the chemical reaction, what will be the chemical agents or reagents that we have to take for wet chemical etching, and how it will take place, how it is going to etch out a certain layer of the silicon. So we are actually limited our discussion for wet chemical etching of silicon. Okay, I'm not discussing about the gallium arsenide. We can also discuss it, but we have to limit ourselves to the silicon only. Okay, so try to understand how this chemical etching of wet chemical etching of silicon is done. So first try to understand, this is obviously a crystalline structure. We have this silicon which is a crystalline structure. Okay, And if we want to remove a certain layer of chemical like silicon, okay, if we want to remove a certain layer of our silicon, then generally removal or wet chemical etching of silicon is actually done by these two processes. Okay, what is those processes that we have to understand? Okay, the first of all is that we have to oxidize the silicon surface. Okay, so if we have a wafer and onto which we have the silicon, let us say, and in the case of, for example, if we want to perform the epitaxy, and if you want to, let us say that if you want to remove a certain layer of the silicon, okay, and if you want to perform the wet chemical etching, as I said that in the case of vapor phase epitaxy or MBE system, rather we use the dry chemical etching. Okay, so one time we are using the physical dry method, okay, physical etching process, okay, and in the other system we are using the dry chemical etching. But suppose that if you wish to do it chemical means wet chemical etching, that time the first thing that we have to perform is we have to go for the oxidation of this silicon. Okay, you remember that I discussed about the oxidation in my previous lectures, in which I explained you the thermal oxidation process. Okay, so here we have to again go for the oxidation of the silicon, and once this silicon getting oxidized and it is forming the SiO2, then this SiO2 will be dissolved to a particular solvent. Okay, a particular chemical solution will be used in which this SiO2 can be dissolvable, and after dissolving it we will be able to remove it from the surface of our silicon. So what are the two steps? First we have to go for the oxidation of our silicon, and then followed by the dissolution of this chemical dissolution of this oxide. So this is what we have to perform. You remember that in the case of wet chemical etching, we generally not go for the thermal oxidation process. Here, the oxidation that we have to perform is actually anodic in nature. Okay, it is an anodic oxidation, anodization we have to perform. Okay, so there are so many methods of doing the oxidation. So we have already seen the thermal oxidation. Okay, there are another method which is known as the anodic oxidation of the silicon. Okay, since the process is related to the anodic oxidation, I am briefly discussing about how this silicon can be oxidized by having this anodization process. Okay, so let's try to understand that how it is done. So first of all, we need to take a certain electrolyte. Okay, first we have to take a certain electrolyte solution. Okay, and within this electrolyte we have to add certain amount of waters. Okay, it may be available in the form of chemical reaction, it may be generated, or it may be added from externally. Okay, so we have to have the waters within this electrolyte medium. Then we have to take one of the electrode will be made up of this semiconductor itself, the wafer that we want to go for the oxidation process or chemical etching. So means we have to we want to etch out. Okay, that semiconductor wafer can be used as the anode, and it will be connected to the positive side of the battery. Okay, so this particular wafer we want to etch out, fine. And here we have to take the platinum, okay, as the cathode. You remember that I'm just talking about right now what is anodic oxidation. I'm not talking about how this etching is done. Okay, so first you try to understand that how this anodic oxidation is done. Once you will be able to understand the anodic oxidation of silicon, then you would be able to understand how this wet chemical etching is done. Okay, so basically first we have to take this as the anode, and then we have to connect it with the positive power supply, positive terminal of the power supply. Okay, DC power supply, and here this platinum cathode will be connected to your negative power supply. Okay, negative terminal of the battery. Fine. Then we have the electrolyte along with the water. So generally when we pass the certain amount of current, okay, then this water available with this electrolyte is going to be dissociated, and it is going to form these two ions, okay, hydrogen ions and hydroxyl ions, OH minus. These two ions is going to be created once we pass the current through this particular electrolytic solution with these two electrodes. Okay, if you remember the electrolytic cells, for example, if you remember, you might have studied that the electrolytes are sodium chloride, and then we pass the current, then one of the terminal means sodium chloride dissociate in the form of sodium plus and chlorine ions, and then sodium is going to be deposited onto a certain electrode, and then chlorine will be going to attracted towards a certain electrode, and then this chlorine will be liberated, and that way the reaction take place and the current flows through the battery. So that you might have studied in your school, the same thing, same concept again, but a little bit difference is that here you can see that the electrode that we have taken is semiconductor. Okay? It is not a metals, fine. So let us say that if we talk about a semiconductor, let's say that this may be a p-type substrate or it may be an n-type substrate. So if suppose that if it is a p-type substrate, generally what happens is due to this positive side of the battery, and because holes p in the p-type semiconductors, holes are the majority charge carriers. Okay, to maintain the potential difference between the electrolyte and the electrodes, what happens is whatever be the holes within this semiconductors, that will be you can say that it is means repelled by this positive power supply, and it will be available at the surfaces. Okay, so the surface silicons, okay, whatever the silicon atoms which are available onto the surface, it will be having the excess holes. So generally, because of the excess holes, generally this silicon atoms which are available onto the surfaces and which are forming the like semiconductor electrolyte interface is having this extra positive charge. Okay, and it will be actually ionized form. Okay, so it will be available in the ionized form, and it will be forming Si2 plus ions. So that you have to remember. So basically, due to this chemical reaction, okay, due to this chemical reaction, what happens is this silicon surface atoms, okay, is become Si2 plus ions. Okay, and this Si2 plus atoms are having means higher oxidation state. Okay, it is having the more higher oxidation rate, you can say, or it is forming a layer which is having means having more affinity towards the oxidation. Okay, so it is having higher oxidation state, and therefore it is forming this Si2 plus. Okay, due to this particular semiconductor, this p type. And then what happens is this Si2 plus is actually, because it is a ionized form, it is going to make a reaction with this negative hydroxyl ions. Okay, so this SiO2 plus ions is going to combine. So you remember that these holes are repelled from the inner side, and then it is going towards the outer surface, and this outer surface becomes Si2 plus ions, and then this Si2 plus ions are actually combined with the hydroxyl ions which are available in the electrolytic solution, and then it is forming a product which is nothing but your SiOH2. Subsequently, this SiOH2 is further dissociates, and then it is actually liberating the hydrogen gas. You see that this SiOH2 will further dissociates, and it is forming this a layer of SiO2, and the hydrogen gas is going to be liberated. Okay, and this way it is actually getting oxidized. You remember that in the case of thermally grown oxidation, okay, of the silicon, if you remember, if you recall my previous lecture, I explained you that generally the oxygen is actually going inside the material, and then it is converting the silicon into silicon dioxide. There will be no growth of the layer over the wafer, but rather wafer is actually going to oxidize, and certain layer is going to be converted into the oxidized layer, SiO2 layer. But here in this case, some of the silicon atoms are actually coming out, and that is making the reaction at the wafer surface, and thereby those is going to be converted into SiO2 layer. Okay, so here we are actually we can see that generally certain amount of silicon atom will come out, okay, and then there will be a reaction is taking place. In the case of thermally grown oxidation, the oxygen is penetrating through and it is going inside and then making the reaction. So generally you will find that the thermally grown oxides layer is having much better property than this anodic oxidation. Okay, so we generally don't prefer this one. Okay, we generally don't prefer this one. But in the case of gallium arsenide, the quality of oxide layer by having this anodic oxidation is much better than the thermally grown oxide layers. So generally for gallium arsenide, it is preferred but for the case of silicon, it is not preferred. So hopefully you must be able to understand that. So whenever we have this silicon, okay, so here I have explained that when it is p type, it is very easy to understood. But whenever it is n type wafer surface, to achieve this oxidation of the surface is much more difficult. You remember that it is very difficult when it is n type wafer surface, because that time the holes are not the majority charge carriers, and generally it has been found that this interface, okay, and this semiconductor and electrolyte interface is actually forming a particular means depletion region, and it is having a barrier which is corresponding to your Schottky diode. Okay, the Schottky barrier that we found, okay, generally here this electrolyte solution is acting as a metal, and here this semiconductor acting as a semiconductor. So metal semiconductor junctions are generally forming a Schottky junction. Okay, a similar junction is also found when it is an n-type wafer surface, and that time we have to generate the holes, okay, by some external means, and that can be only done either by the photogeneration of the holes within this plate, or otherwise we have to increase this potential to supply the holes that will be able to cross the barrier, and that it will be able to reach to the surface. Okay, so that will be a little complexity when it is n-type substrate, but whenever it is p-type substrate, it is very fairly simple, and straight away all the holes will get towards the outer surface of this particular electrode, and then it will be converting the silicon atoms into the silicon ions, and then this all reaction will take place, and then we are going to get this oxidized layer of your silicon. Okay, so now if you understood this concept, okay, of anodic oxidation, okay, let's try to understand that how this wet chemical etching can be performed. Okay, how this wet chemical etching performed, because we said that this oxidation of silicon is generally anodic in nature, and then after forming this SiO2 layer, we need to remove or dissolve it into a particular chemical solution. So try to see this one. Okay, so here you can see basically the most commonly used agent, okay, wet chemicals that we have to use is the mixture of this HNO3 and HF. Okay, so these two chemicals we have to use in a certain portion, means in a certain composition. Okay, so that we can make this agent, okay, along with the water and acetic or acetic acid as a dilute. Okay, so either water or acetic acid can be used. Okay, that can be used for controlling the concentration of these two things, and thereby it is able to control the etch rate. Okay, so dilution can be performed by adding the water or acetic acid. So as I said that this oxidation is same as the anodic oxidation. Okay, but you remember that in the case of anodic oxidation, what we had is we had a clearly defined anode and cathodes. Okay, we have the clearly defined anodes and cathodes. But generally in the case of wet chemical etching, and obviously we have this battery, okay, which is actually connected to the positive side and the negative side, and then it is the source of hole. Okay, this positive side is actually acting as a source of hole. Okay, and by increasing the potential in the n-type, in the case of n-type substrate, or if it is a p-type substrate, this battery is supplying the holes to this particular substrate. But in this case, there will be no clearly defined anode or cathode. You remember that. Okay, there will be no clearly defined anode or cathode, or there will be no such batteries. But generally, when we place our wafer inside the chemical solution, the surface of the semiconductors itself, okay, behaves as a randomly localized anode. So basically, point on the surface of the semiconductor behaves as a randomly localized anode and cathode. Why we are saying it is a randomly localized anode and cathode? Because any point onto the surface of the wafer cannot be act as only as a cathode. Okay, sometimes it acts for a certain amount of time. It may act as a cathode, and for a other amount of time, okay, it may act as an anode. The meaning is that the point onto the surface, sometimes it is acting as an anode, and for sometimes it is acting as a cathode. So there will be a rule reversal that will be taking place as the etching process is progressing. Okay, so that is actually happening within this particular wet chemical etching. Okay, so that way this role reversal is going to take place. At certain points will act as a anode, and other point is act as a cathode. Then after some times when etching is done, this role reversal will take place. Then the same point will act as the anode, then other point will act as a cathode. So generally when this role reversal is taking place for roughly equal amount of time, then we are going to get the uniform etching. Okay, and if this time is not uniform, obviously we are going to get the non-uniform etching. Okay, so now you try to understand how this is actually what will be the chemical reaction that is going to take place. Okay, so as I said that there will be the anode reaction. Okay, as we seen in this case that from the battery we are actually supplying a certain holes, and then we are going to make this silicon atoms of the surface. We have to convert this into the silicon ions. Okay, silicon 2+ ion. Similarly, the same reaction has to take place in the case of chemical, means chemical etching of the silicon also. Okay, wet chemical etching. So we need to supply a certain amount of holes. Okay, that has to be supplied to this silicon so that the silicon can be converted into this silicon positive ions. Okay, that we need to convert. So if you see in the previous case, we had the power supply, okay, battery, and that battery was supplying these holes. Okay, this positive charge was actually supplied by the holes, and then that holes was actually going to the surface. But in this case, as I said, that we don't have any battery. Okay, we don't have any battery. Then how these holes can be supplied to this particular silicon so that this silicon can be converted into positive silicon ions? So basically, this is actually happens due to certain chemical reactions. So what are those chemical reactions that we have to understand? So here I have written like the holes which are required for the above reaction is produced by the reduction of this NO2, okay, at localized cathode. So you try to understand that first we have to take this solution of HNO3, okay, and HF. These two combination we have to take. So now you try to see this basically when we take this HNO3, okay, within the chemical solution of HNO3, there will be a very small amount of impurity of HNO2 will always available. Okay, it is always available in a very small amount. Okay, so we don't add this HNO2 means externally, but rather it will be available along with the HNO3 itself. Okay, so generally what happens at HNO2, uh, when we perform, basically because of the trace impurity available with the HNO3, there will be a chemical reaction which is going to take place, okay, between this HNO2 and HNO3, and this reaction is going to give you this byproduct. Okay, this byproduct is now going to form you N2O4 and water. Okay, this will be the byproduct of the chemical reaction between these two species. You try to see this here, this as I explained that HNO2 is a trace impurity which is available along with the HNO3. We are not adding it from anywhere. Okay, it is already available with the HNO3. Now, this N2O4 is actually continuously forming this product NO2. Okay, this is going to form this particular product. It is a bidirectional reaction, so it is going to form this particular product. Okay, and again it will sometimes forming this. Okay, so this is because of the chemical reactions. Okay, this NO2 can also be dissociated into this two. Okay, it is it is either going, means it is going to form this NO2 minus ions, and it is also going to liberate these two holes. Okay, means two positive charges. So basically this holes that we require to convert this top silicon surface, okay, into silicon ions, these holes are actually provided by the dissociation of this particular NO. Okay, so within the chemical, this NO2 is actually going to dissociate it, and it is actually liberating this holes. That holes are going to the silicon surface, and then the silicon surface is actually converting into silicon 2+. So you try to understand here, we don't have any means defined anode or cathode, but this chemical itself making a reaction onto the surface of the wafer, and then because of this byproducts which is forming, because of these byproducts, some of the holes are generated, and those holes are actually converting this silicon surface into the silicon 2+ ions. And then this this particular holes will be used for converting this one. And then again here you can see this this particular byproduct itself, what happens, it is again reacting with this. Okay, and then it is going to form this product again, it to HNO2. Okay, so there are lots of reaction which is taking place. Okay, so sometimes at some instances it is actually going to form this. Okay, sometimes it is again recombining, and then it is forming this particular product. Okay, so it is going to make this products. Okay, well, it is when it is making the reactions. So you try to understand here is that this reaction is called as autocatalytic. Okay, so basically you see for having this particular reaction, you see what we require is we require this HNO2. Okay, we require this HNO2. So why we are calling it as autocatalytic? Because we need this HNO2. Okay, and after having this all reaction step, at the end you can see that we actually also forming the HNO2. Okay, so this reaction itself generating the HNO2, which is required for generating these two holes. Okay, so that's why this HNO2 re-enters into the reaction with the HNO3. Okay, so we do have a certain trace amount of HNO2. Okay, that may initiate the reaction. Okay, and after that, having this all reactions, again the byproduct will be HNO2 that may re-enter into the reaction with the HNO3, and this process continues. Okay, this reaction will continue, and this way this hole can be further generated. Okay, these holes can be further generated, and then the silicon can be converted into silicon 2+ ion. Okay, in some cases, what we do is to induce the reactions. Okay, generally we actually add these ions. Okay, NO2 minus ions. Okay, these ions we generally add. Okay, to induce the reactions, and these ions can be added in the form of NH4NO2. In this form, we have to add the some chemical solutions, and due to some chemical reaction, this ions is going to be released. Okay, and then we can induce this particular reaction. Okay, in some cases. So now once we have this hydrogen source atom, means this holes. Okay, these holes are going to convert the silicon into the silicon 2 plus ions, and now you can see because within this we have the HO2 also. Okay, water. We do adding certain water, or there will be a reaction product as a water. Okay, this water is again going to dissociate into this two ions, hydrogen plus and hydroxyl ions, and then this hydroxyl ions, as I said, it will be going to combine with the silicon 2 plus. It is going to form this SiOH2, okay, as a product, and then this SiOH2 will again be converted into SiO2, and it is going to liberate the hydrogen gas. And then this SiO2 layer, which is formed over the surface, that will be can be dissolvable within the hydrofluoric acid. Okay, so HF will dissolve this SiO2 layer with this particular reaction. Okay, SiO2 with hydrofluoric acid is going to give you this product, and this product we can remove easily. Okay, after stirring, this can be removed from the surface. H2SiF6 can be removed from the soluble complex H2SiF6, okay, from the vicinity of your silicon slice. So this way we actually perform our wet chemical etching. So here you can see this picture I have already explained you. Okay, so generally we while doing this chemical etching, we have to place our entire wafer inside the this particular chemical solutions. Okay, and then this chemical reaction will take place. Okay, and then one by one, due to the stirring, this byproduct can be removed, and this way we will be able to remove the silicon from the surface. So hopefully you must be able to understand the overall reaction is given by this particular equation, silicon plus HNO3 plus 6HF. Okay, and then this way we are liberating the hydrogen, some water. Okay, then HNO2 is the byproduct. Okay, and this can be removed. Okay, this can be removed. So this is the overall reaction of our wet chemical etching process. So hopefully you must have understood this particular wet chemical etching. If you have any query, let me know with your comments. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any query, let me know with your comments.